Hi, my name is Reef, and you might know me as the guy who made a bunch of Christian mods for various games. For example, the entire Bible for Minecraft, the New Testament for Roblox, various different Bibles for Garry's Mod, or even flag mods for XCOM 2, Zealous, and Airships Conquer the Skies. I even came close to pursuing entertainment as a career. But believe me, I wasn't always like this. A few years back, I was an atheistic nihilist who dreaded life and could draw a pentagram from muscle memory. In a sense, I was like the average internet addict. My identity was not my own. It was the media that I consumed which gave me meaning. And to be fair, I saw no alternative, given how my environment wasn't the most inviting. Unfortunately, I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. I've seen too many who live their lives as if they're living in a matrix pod. So you might wonder, how did I make this jump? How and why did I switch from the average clinical depressed to becoming a fulfilled Catholic? How did the trajectory of my life change so drastically? As I saw how many souls are destroyed by New Age atheism, I decided it's my duty to share my own journey on how everything got turned on its head. The year is 2020. My location? Rock bottom. Due to a multitude of reasons, I was not doing well. Life was a strain, and the failures I've suffered left me quite broken. For roughly a decade, every year I had been feeling worse than the last. At every firework, it felt like the past had died. Now was the beginning. Now I was improving. Now I would meet the right people. But I didn't, and the scars of the past never got any better. I continued fighting the same war. Sure, the battlefields changed, but the battles themselves were highly identical. Unsurprisingly, I had become quite fond of Russian Duma music, and later punk. Although I could not understand Russian, it perfectly conveyed my emotions. The past, present and future looked bleak, and the fault was partially my own, partially my surroundings. At this point, I'd already become interested in psychology, looking into the different mental conditions and their solutions. Yet that didn't really help me. I didn't want to accept these conditions. I wanted to, needed to fix them, and my way of life prevented me from sharing my issues with anybody. Naturally, my next question was, what's the meaning of life? For so long, I never really asked myself that question seriously, but now that all of my distractions and safeguards were gone, I had to finally stare intensely at the abyss. I reached the rock bottom of glass, and it was starting to break. Is there even a reason why I'm doing all this? Or was life just a futile mix of fun and pain? My next stop was modern philosophy, where the glass came close to its breaking point. I realized that if there is no afterlife, the consequences my actions carry in this life are ultimately meaningless, regardless of what some atheist philosopher might try to tell me using his mental gymnastics. Life is to live. Well, I'm not really gonna be able to care after life, am I? And as I looked around, it seemed like atheism had become the modus operandi of our society. You're just expected to function, and if you do well, you'll be able to indulge yourself in whatever pleasure is currently acceptable. And if you believe in a sky daddy, you're an idiot and a weakling. That's certainly not who I want to be, so I might as well sell the rights to my soul since I don't have one. From that point on, every moment in which I suffered, the seemingly logical conclusion glared at me like a creature in the night stalking its prey. The end was nigh. Still, I couldn't accept it. It is as if there had been a civil war myself between self-proclaimed logical conclusions and intrinsic human love. Funnily enough, my favorite characters soon became Simon from Choir of Fear and Joe from You Turn to Die. Both are manifestations of those perspectives, self-loathing and love for others. Ultimately, they were locked in a war of attrition, and I started practicing self-improvement around 2021. I began meditating, which was quite nice. More specifically, a few select Netflix Headspace meditations. I also began keeping a sort of digital diary to record the course of my mind, Before I even knew, Simon was doing the exact same thing. By now I've deleted it, but those were nothing compared to my later Excel sheet. The year is 2022, and it marks the definitive turning point of my journey. At the time, I was watching this anime called Kaiji Ultimate Survivor. Regardless of our vastly different lives, me and him were just as aimless. Yet at the end of the show, he had changed. To avoid spoilers, I'll just call it the mirror scene. As I witnessed it, it felt like a current was flowing through me. I paused and went to the bathroom, giving myself an intense stare at the mirror. An idea was born. I would now dedicate at least 30 minutes every day to self-improvement. Doesn't matter in what area, just at least 30 minutes, unless it was impossible, like due to hospitalization. To track my time, I wrote it into an Excel sheet. It was genius, really. Think about video games. Every video game revolves around some number, or goal that is attained with other numbers. Kills, levels, money, you get the idea. The more you get of that number, the more dopamine you earn. It was the same for my Excel sheet. Almost every day I spent more than 30 minutes to increase the total self-improvement time I'd obtain. I also later set up an all-time per day average counter. Increasing those numbers just became such a rewarding objective. Trust me, it was amazing, and I'll be honest, that God's idea, and by extension the anime Kaiji, which I was also only made aware of by total coincidence, probably saved my life. But we're getting ahead of ourselves here. Anyway, one of those areas I could obtain these minutes in was religion. I wanted to know if I was right with my atheism, or if there perhaps was indeed a spiritual truth. And boy, it surprised me. At first, I thought this wouldn't get me anywhere. Like, religion is just a 6,000-year-old trick to scam peasants. If there was a real reason to believe, surely the media will tell me. But then I started watching videos of the venerable Fulton Sheen, seeing that 20th century person who was clearly far more intelligent and far more reasonable than me, praising Jesus and the Catholic Church out of all places, showed me that I had the wrong perception. As I started digging, I realized that Christianity had very compelling evidence. Everything from philosophy to forensic evidence. You see, you can't just prove a historical event the way you can prove the laws of physics. One is repeatable, the other isn't, and yet we still hold to certain historical events as true. On the other hand, you can't just trust what a person tells you like you can trust a historical event. One has already left behind traces, while the other only speaks fleeting words. As such, I used every bit of information I had from every sector to make my judgment, which was first Christianity, then later Catholic Christianity. The normal one, not a Ascetic Adventist or Charismatic version. It is quite difficult to remember every individual aspect of this, and since the goal of this video is not to bundle up every single argument, I will just pick a very few. In the case of Christianity, the final straw was the Shroud of Turin. Big emphasis on final straw. I was already pretty much a Christian at that point, just not fully. The Bible records that during his final day, Jesus suffered from a multitude of different injuries. He was then buried by a rich man. The shroud proves the Gospels do not lie about these facts. The shroud's material is one that was at the time in that area of a high quality, a sort of luxury that befits a rich man. More importantly, the shroud actually has an imprint of a person. The wounds present on it match up perfectly with the Gospels. Whipping, crucifixion, spear, you name it. Make no mistake, forging this is an extremely complicated, if by now not impossible task, and even today we have not found any reasonable explanation for its creation, a hint at divine origin. Furthermore, reliable tests on it, unlike certain biased ones, such as the famous incorrect carbon dating, have dated it to the time period of the crucifixion. It gets even crazier when you consider the vision of saints, such as the abbot Bernard of Clairvaux, in which Jesus told him that his greatest wound was one on the shoulder, although it was unrecorded by men. And, lo and behold, The Shroud of Turin does show a wounded, dislocated shoulder. It was the last percentage point I needed to be 100% confident in Christianity. Just as a fun side note, that shoulder wound is quite interesting to me, and I should probably start my devotion with it because I once had this really strong pain in my shoulder. Moving became almost impossible. I thought, well, this might be it. I started praying, realizing how my plentyraries and dramas of that day are ultimately meaningless in contrast to an infinite afterlife. And somehow, that sharp pain turned into an almost joyous, soft pain. And I'm certain that it was the physical structure of the pain that changed, not just my mental endurance of it. Now back to the topic. If I was now proven wrong about the Shroud of Turin, I would still remain a Catholic for good new reasons. Roughly around the time of discovering the Shroud, I had to ask myself another very important question. If Christianity is true, well then, what Christianity is? Protestantism, Catholicism, maybe even Orthodoxy? There's not really anything else to pick from other than cults. It all came down to the source of authority. I was quite disappointed when I realized that the Bible, and consequently God's will, are so difficult to understand. So much context is just missing. And so I prayed I will find the right way of understanding him, as otherwise he will make no sense to me. In the end, I decided for the papacy. Sure, it took some time historically for it to be fully understood, but that goes for plenty Christian doctrine. Even the apostles themselves took quite long to understand Christ. And as I continued digging, I realized that most people have a completely wrong perception of the Catholic Church. Thanks, media. So this was the conclusion I arrived at, despite the fact that I'm kind of disappointed with my German bishops. But I knew that this discernment was far from perfect. I mean, how could it? I don't have time to read every single Christian document ever written and then fact-check the likelihood that it's not a forgery and that the surrounding context doesn't lead me to a misinterpretation. I just looked at the general picture, created by the details I investigated, and thought, well, historically, scripturally, and philosophically, the papacy does make the most sense. Regardless, I always left this escape route open, that if somehow I miss something really big, and the papacy is false, I can still turn back. You may regard that as a good thing, and it sure is for pretty much everything. But is it really, when I stake my life on it? I would never play a $1 million lottery with a 0.1 chance of me dying instead. So I will want to take that chance, with fully devoting myself to Catholicism. And this is where the miracles come in. We've got Padre Pio, we've got Fatima, we've got countless testimonies and artifacts of miracles, and the most important miracles of all of those are the ones that happened to me. Most often, when I prayed for something the Catholic way, like to the saints, especially with the Rosary or Novena, God gave me a positive answer. And wherever I asked him to guide me to the right church, wherever that might be, he never made me leave Catholicism. Instead, when I leave confession or the Eucharist, I feel such an unexpected lightness. And I'm very happy with my daily rosary. Again, these are not the only reasons why I'm Catholic, but in combination with all other reasons, including non-religious ones, such as the behavior of evil societies towards Catholicism, I decided in 2024 that I'll be a Catholic until the day I die, unless God himself told me otherwise. And it's been the most fulfilling decision of my entire life. During the course of 2023, I saw how strongly I changed in comparison to 2022, and I saw that the way our world currently nurtures its offspring is wrong, whereas I till then had been its disciple. The best example is how widespread, not safe for work, content has become, infesting almost every nook and cranny of both internet and reality. Some even call it necessary and important for your mentality. I call that absolute rubbish. Staying off that utter filth has been one of the most rewarding decisions of my life, even if the world's acceptance and total desire of it has made this abstinent path one of absolute carnage. While I would love to claim otherwise, it has been my primary motivation for creating Christian works. Every time my strained eyes witness how corrupt a piece of media becomes, the desire to create an opposition grows inside my heart, so that every person can truly understand that there is another path. One that has not become irrelevant as I formerly believed, but one that might be as relevant as it ever has been. And that's how I got here. That's why I created all of these works, including this one, and why I am, and always will be, a Catholic. I do not ask for any kind of sympathy or praise, rather I hope you enjoyed this tale and learned something. During this year, I realized that a position in the arts will be my dream job. Just for fun, I've been writing a dystopian script for a series, set between Half-Life 1 and 2, and as I watch the news, I feel like a prophet. Though as I will never find an artisan's job with a stable income, I'd rather do hard work for the rest of my life to support my future children. In the worst case, my life is cut short, which, considering the state of this country, is becoming more and more likely by the hour. I hope this will not be my last mini-biography, and if it is, well, then I'm glad I manned up to make it. My name is Reeve, and God loves you.